Let's begin with a simple question. What if your greatest breakthrough is waiting just beyond your breaking point? It's midnight, the darkest hour. It's when everything appears to be falling apart. The diagnosis comes in. The relationship ends, the bank account hits zero. The addiction feels louder than your will to change. You've prayed, you've fought, you've waited. And nothing seems to move, but here's the paradox. That moment of total collapse is often the gateway to the miraculous. Because in the void, where logic fails and your senses scream that it's over, that's where the divine intelligence steps in. Not when we are strong, but when we surrender. Not when we're clinging, but when we finally let go. Why? Because what you call midnight is not the end, it's the threshold. Now, let's talk science for a moment. Your brain, your body, your electromagnetic field, they're constantly broadcasting signals into the quantum field. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel is shaping your destiny, not just metaphorically, literally. And the problem is, most people are rehearsing failure, fear, and limitation like a script they forgot how to stop reading. Their thoughts are anchored in what they can see. They're addicted to survival mode chemicals, stress hormones that block creativity, clarity, and even healing. But when you decide to stop living by the memory of your past and start living by the vision of your future, you activate something astonishing. Coherence. Your heart and brain begin to align. Your biology reorganizes. You enter the present moment, not as a victim of your past, but as a creator of the miraculous. This is where faith meets frequency. You can't wait for your external world to change before you feel peace or gratitude or worthiness. You have to become the signal of what you want before it arrives, because God doesn't respond to desperation. God responds to alignment. Miracles don't happen because you begged long enough. They happen because you became the version of yourself who can receive them. And sometimes that becoming only happens at midnight, when your ego finally breaks, when your fear finally bows, and all that's left is your soul wide open. In ancient stories, it's always midnight when the prison doors shake open, when the sea splits, when the chains fall off. Why? Because midnight is symbolic. It's the moment your human ability ends and divine possibility begins. And hear this, just because you don't see movement doesn't mean nothing's moving. The seed doesn't scream when it breaks open in the soil. The shift doesn't shout, it starts silently. But something is forming in the unseen. So when your senses say, it's impossible, drop into the deeper knowing that says, it's already done. Tonight, I challenge you to rehearse your miracle. Not with desperation, but with certainty. Visualize it, feel it. Speak as though it's unfolding now. Because in the quantum there is no past, no future, only now. And in that now, the impossible becomes probable. Healing happens, freedom flows, doors open, relationships restore, the pattern breaks. That's not just spiritual, it's biological, and it's your birthright. So the next time it's midnight in your life, don't panic, pause, close your eyes, breathe into the infinite. Connect to that sacred intelligence that knows you better than you know yourself. And say, God, move, I'm ready. Because He will, not by your strength, not by sight, but by a resonance that transcends everything you thought you knew. Midnight isn't the end, it's the beginning, and miracles move fastest when it looks impossible. Midnight symbolizes the threshold between breakdown and breakthrough. It represents more than just a time on the clock, it's a metaphor for the darkest moment in our personal journey. The space where everything seems uncertain, unstable, and unbearably still. It's when the noise of the world quiets, distractions fade, and you're left alone with your thoughts, fears, and faith. In many spiritual and transformational narratives, midnight is the moment of greatest testing, but also the moment where supernatural intervention begins. It's the point where human effort has been exhausted and the only thing left is surrender to something greater. Biologically and energetically, this midnight is when the nervous system has often been in a prolonged state of stress, and the body and brain are primed either for collapse or radical change. The threshold is a liminal space, neither where you were nor where you're going, but a void in between. And it's in that void that new patterns begin. Neurologically, the old neural pathways are disrupted, and if we choose to respond differently, through surrender, trust, and elevated emotion, new network can begin to form. It's the moment the old identity starts to dissolve. Midnight is also symbolic of the subconscious mind, a place that doesn't operate on logic or time. It's the fertile ground for planting new visions, new beliefs, new outcomes. In the silence and stillness of this figurative hour, there is an invitation to go inward, to listen to a deeper intelligence. The same way the physical world turns quietly from one day to the next without any noise or fanfare, transformation often begins in these unseen, subtle shifts. That moment of total stillness, when everything appears impossible, is often the doorway to something far greater than what the mind can calculate. The divine moves most powerfully when human strength runs out. There comes a point in every journey where effort, strategy, and intellect are no longer enough. It's the moment when control slips through your fingers, and no matter how much you try to fix, force, or figure it out, nothing changes. This is not failure, it's an invitation into a higher realm of trust where the limitations of the personal self dissolve, making room for something greater to move. The human ego is conditioned to believe that outcomes depend solely on doing, striving, and managing every variable. But there is a threshold where that belief system collapses, and what remains is the raw openness of surrender. When the nervous system is overtaxed and the body can no longer maintain the stress of effort, a shift can happen. This is where the deeper intelligence within us and beyond us begins to emerge. Physiologically, when you let go of trying to survive, the body can move out of the sympathetic state and into coherence. Spiritually, this is the space where grace enters. The divine does not compete with your will, it waits for your release. And in that space of release, where the mind stops grasping for answers, new possibilities can arise that you never could have orchestrated on your own. What looks like the end is often the clearing for what was never visible while you were in control. The collapse of personal power is often the beginning of supernatural flow. Whether you call it God, the quantum field, or universal intelligence, it responds not to the force of your hand, but to the openness of your heart. It's in that emptiness, that place of complete surrender, where the impossible starts to become real and the unseen starts to move. Your thoughts and emotions broadcast your future into the quantum field. Every thought you consistently think carries an electrical charge, and every emotion you feel carries a magnetic one. Together, they form an electromagnetic signature, a frequency, that is constantly interacting with the energetic field around you. This is not metaphorical, it's measurable. Neuroscience shows that our brains are not just recorders of the past, but also transmitters of intention. When your thoughts are aligned with elevated emotions like gratitude, love, and trust, you become a coherent signal that influences what shows up in your life. Most people unconsciously live in a feedback loop. They think in response to what they see, and they feel in response to what they think. If their current environment reflects limitation, pain, or lack, then their thoughts mirror those patterns, and their emotions reinforce them. This means they continue broadcasting the same signal, and the quantum field simply reflects it back through repeated experiences. Change becomes impossible because the signal never changes. However, when you become aware of this process, you can interrupt it. You can deliberately choose to think beyond your current circumstances and emotionally connect to a future that hasn't happened yet. By doing so, you change your energetic signature. Instead of broadcasting from your past, you start broadcasting from your potential. This is how intention becomes manifestation. The field around you responds not to what you want, but to what you are broadcasting through thought and emotion. This is why discipline in thought and mastery of emotion are not just personal development ideas, they are creative tools. When you combine a clear intention with an elevated emotion and sustain that inner state regardless of your outer reality, you begin to shift what's possible in the field of your life. Survival, Mode chemistry blocks miracles, coherence invites them. When the body is in a constant state of stress, triggered by fear, anxiety, anger, or overwhelm, it releases a cascade of chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline. These chemicals are designed for short bursts of activity to help you escape danger. But when this state becomes chronic, it narrows your focus, shortens your breath, tightens your muscles, and restricts the flow of creative energy. In survival, the brain shifts into high alert, scanning for threats rather than possibilities. You can't imagine a new future from that place because you're biologically wired to repeat the past. In this state, the heart and brain become incoherent. They no longer communicate in harmony. Instead, they create internal chaos, making it difficult to access intuition, insight, or inspiration. Miracles, those unexplainable shifts in circumstance, require an open and aligned internal state. They don't emerge from fear. They are born from inner order. This is where coherence becomes essential. When the heart begins to beat in a steady, harmonious rhythm and the brain waves become synchronized, the entire body moves into balance. This state is measurable and it's powerful. Coherence is not just calmness. It's an elevated and energized awareness where the body and mind work together in unity. When you're coherent, your energy is no longer scattered or drained by survival impulses. It becomes focused, intentional, and magnetic. In this state, the body begins to heal, the mind becomes clear, and the field around you becomes more responsive to your desires. You are no longer reacting to life, you are shaping it. This is the space where synchronicities increase, where answers appear without effort, and where outcomes shift in ways that logic alone cannot explain. Coherence doesn't just change your state, it changes your signal. You must embody the frequency of your miracle before it manifests. Most people are waiting for their external conditions to change so they can finally feel peace, joy, freedom, or abundance. But this approach is backward. The quantum field doesn't respond to what we want. It responds to who we are being. Every emotional state carries a frequency, and every frequency communicates with the invisible field of potential. When you continue to live in the emotional patterns of fear, doubt, or lack, even if you speak affirmations or pray for change, your signal remains misaligned with the reality you desire. To embody the frequency of your miracle means to live internally as though it has already occurred. It's not pretending or denying your current situation. It's training your body and mind to emotionally experience the outcome before it arrives. The body doesn't know the difference between a real experience and an intensely imagined one. When you truly feel gratitude for something you haven't yet received, your brain begins wiring new patterns and your heart starts sending out a different electromagnetic signature. This is how you become a magnet for new outcomes. You're no longer reacting to the present, you're rehearsing the future. And the more you stay in that elevated state, whether it's love, gratitude, healing, or abundance, the more consistent and powerful your signal becomes. Over time, you start to influence the field in a way that draws people, circumstances, and opportunities that reflect your inner state. Embodiment is the bridge between intention and manifestation. It turns wishful thinking into energetic congruence. It's not enough to think positively. You have to feel the future you're creating, anchor it in your nervous system, and act from that place as if it were already your truth. God responds to alignment, not desperation. Desperation is a state of lack, a frequency of fear that reinforces the belief that what you desire is separate from you. It signals to the universe, to the divine, that you are not connected to the very thing you're asking for. While desperation often feels intense and emotional, it is rooted in the energy of disconnection. It amplifies the distance between you and your desired outcome by focusing on its absence. When you plead, beg, or obsess over your need for change, you're sending a clear message: I don't have it, and I don't believe I can. Alignment, however, is a completely different posture. It is rooted in trust, in coherence, in knowing. It is the energetic state where your thoughts, emotions, and actions are in harmony with the outcome you seek. When you're aligned, you are not chasing or striving. You are embodying. You are living as though the prayer is already answered, the healing already complete, the door already opened. This frequency creates a powerful resonance in the quantum field. It draws in the exact experiences, relationships, and events that match your internal state. Divine intelligence doesn't need noise. It responds to vibration. Alignment isn't passive, it's deeply engaged, but from a place of peace rather than panic. When your heart is open, your mind is clear, and your body is present, you become a vessel for the miraculous. You stop resisting what is and begin partnering with what could be. Alignment says, I trust the timing, I trust the process, I trust the source. And in that space of trust, doors open effortlessly, solutions emerge organically, and what once seemed impossible begins to move into form. The frequency of alignment is faith in motion. True transformation begins when the ego surrenders. The ego is the part of us that is shaped by memory, identity, and survival. It clings to what it knows because it finds safety in the familiar, even when the familiar is painful or limiting. The ego is not the enemy, but it often becomes a barrier to deep change because it is invested in maintaining control. It wants to predict, to protect, and to preserve. Transformation, however, requires stepping into the unknown, and the ego resists the unknown because it cannot guarantee outcomes there. When the ego surrenders, something remarkable happens. The need to be right dissolves. The attachment to outcomes softens. The stories we've told ourselves about who we are, what we deserve, what is or isn't possible, begin to unravel. In that unraveling, there is space for a new identity to emerge, not based on past experiences but on future potential. Neurologically, the brain begins to rewire. The circuits that have fired in repetitive loops of fear, judgment, or limitation start to lose their hold. Emotionally, the heart becomes more open, receptive, and coherent. This surrender is not about weakness. It's a courageous release of the illusion of control. It's the moment you stop trying to force your life into shape and start allowing a greater intelligence to work through you. In that allowing, transformation doesn't feel like striving. It feels like remembering. Remembering who you were before the pain, before the conditioning, before the fear took root. It's the return to authenticity, to inner alignment, to truth. When the ego steps aside, the soul has room to breathe. It's here, in the absence of resistance, that new energy flows in, creativity returns, and the miraculous becomes not only possible, but natural. The unseen realm is always moving before the seen world catches up. What manifests in your external life is always a delayed reflection of what has already shifted in the invisible layers of consciousness. This means that change does not begin when you see it. It begins when you align with it internally. The physical world is slower, denser, and governed by time, while the energetic realm, your thoughts, emotions, intentions, is instant, fluid, and beyond linear logic. Every breakthrough, every healing, every answered prayer begins in this unseen field long before it shows up in your visible reality. This is why faith is so essential. Faith is not blind optimism. It is the ability to trust the process even when nothing seems to be happening. It is the inner knowing that the signal you're sending out, through elevated emotion, focused thought, and embodied belief, is activating a response in the quantum field. Just because you cannot see movement with your eyes doesn't mean the movement isn't real. Like seeds planted in soil, transformation unfolds below the surface first. The roots grow silently before the shoot appears. The energy rearranges itself quietly before the evidence becomes obvious. People often give up just before the break, because they misinterpret silence as stagnation. But the unseen realm is governed by laws of resonance, coherence, and vibration. If you are maintaining alignment, staying in the frequency of what you've asked for, then a response is inevitable. It may not arrive in the form or timing you expect, but it is already on its way. The energetic blueprint is being built before the structure ever appears in your life. The more you stay connected to the inner vision, the more quickly the outer world reorganizes to match it. What looks still is often where the most powerful shifts are occurring. Faith isn't hope, it's experiential certainty in the unseen. Hope is often passive, it's wishing for something better while still feeling uncertain or doubtful about the outcome. Faith, on the other hand, is an active state of being. It's a deep knowing that what you desire is already true in the invisible realm, even if your current circumstances suggest otherwise. This kind of faith is not based on evidence, logic, or external validation. It arises from a direct experience within your own consciousness. It is the feeling of certainty that surpasses the mind's reasoning. When you cultivate this faith, you begin to operate from a place beyond your five senses. You move from reaction to creation, from waiting to allowing. This shift happens because faith changes your energetic state. It aligns your thoughts, emotions, and physiology with the reality you intend to manifest. Neuroscience shows that when you combine belief with elevated emotion, like gratitude, love, or joy, you create a coherent pattern in the brain and heart that broadcasts a powerful signal into the quantum field. This signal attracts experiences that match the frequency of your faith. Experiential certainty means you don't have to see the outcome to feel it as real, you embody it now in the present moment. This embodiment rewires your nervous system, releasing resistance and opening you to receive what you've asked for. It transforms your body and mind into instruments of creation rather than reaction. Faith is also the foundation for resilience. When you face setbacks or delays, faith keeps you anchored. It is the inner compass that guides you through uncertainty, reminding you that what is unseen is more real than what appears to be. It's a powerful magnet that pulls the miraculous into your experience, not because of wishful thinking, but because of a deep, unshakable certainty in the unseen order of things. Midnight isn't the end, it's where the impossible begins to reverse. In life, we often perceive darkness and difficulty as final, as proof that our efforts have failed or that the situation is hopeless. But this perception is limited by time and conditioned thinking. Midnight, both literally and metaphorically, represents the deepest point of stillness and silence before a new dawn. It is the turning point when the forces of transformation gather unseen momentum. Just as the darkest hour of night precedes the sunrise, the moments of greatest challenge in our lives often signal that change is imminent. At midnight, everything familiar has been stripped away. The structures we relied on no longer support us, and the old ways of thinking, feeling, and being lose their grip. This loss creates a vacuum, a space of potential where new possibilities can emerge. The universe does not work on a clock, but it does move in rhythms. The stillness of midnight is a natural pause, a reset point where the impossible can begin to shift. It is in this pause that the quantum field is most responsive to new frequencies, new intentions, and new patterns. When you find yourself in the metaphorical midnight of your life, it is an invitation to surrender old narratives of limitation and open yourself to unseen solutions. The external chaos often masks an internal reordering. Your biology, your consciousness, and your energy systems are recalibrating to a higher level of coherence. This recalibration is not visible immediately because it happens beneath the surface, in the energetic and subtle realms. It is often just before the breakthrough that you feel the most doubt and fear. But this is precisely the moment when the impossible begins to unravel, when hidden doors quietly swing open, and when miracles start to align. Midnight marks the edge of transformation, where the impossible, once immovable, begins to move.